If today was your last day and tomorrow was too late, could you say goodbye to yesterday? Or would you live each moment like your last? Leave old pictures in the past. Donate every dime you had. If today was your last day.
George Bernard Shaw, famous man, had the opportunity to know people all over the world, dignitaries, celebrities, and had a phenomenal life of being around some of the greatest and most impressive people in the world. He was interviewed later in his life, and they asked him, they said, they decided to play the what if game. They said, you know, George, because you know so many great dignitaries, so many great people, you've seen so many great things in your life, if you could be anybody in the world, anybody at all, who would you want to be? And he answered brilliantly by saying, I would be the George Bernard Shaw that I could have been, but never was. How many of us might say that? How many of us might look at our life and say, you know what I wanted to accomplish, what I thought I had the potential of, what my business had the potential of, that's what I really wanted to be. If I could do it all over again, I would like to be that which I just didn't quite accomplish. You know, we look at our lives, and I think when we begin, we start with such a purity. And we're young people, and we look at life, and we go, you know what? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an insurance agent. No, we do that. I want to be something great. And I believe that I can. I believe I can be a professional football player, or a performer, or something just absolutely phenomenal. And we have this vision, and the ceiling is so high. Yeah, there may be some glass up there that becomes tough to bump through every once in a while, but it's so far out there we can see everything clearly. And when we start a business, we look at our lives the same way, and we go, oh my goodness, look what I'm going to do. Look what my life's going to be like. I'm going to have freedom. I'm going to have success. I'm going to do things no one else has ever done before. And we have that excitement. And then as time goes on, unfortunately, that glass ceiling starts lowering. And it gets a little cloudy. And it gets harder to see the things that are above that ceiling. And then all of a sudden we start bumping our head against it a little bit. And we have to tug down because our expectations get a little bit lower. And our value starts getting a little more diluted. And our lives become lower and lower. And we end up settling for being so much less than what we dreamed was possible. But yet there's some people that are able to push through that. And some people that are able to accomplish things. And if you looked across the table, across the room, across the world, and said, I just don't get how they did it. Well, unfortunately, when we talk to many of you, you know what we hear? They did it, but it won't work for me. It doesn't work in my marketplace. That's different for us. And we start justifying falling short of where we really had potential to go. Now, this is not about money. This is not about being any kind of labeled success. What I'm here to talk to you about today is about your potential. Reaching your potential is what's going to make you happy. Not a certain dollar amount, not a certain size of business. It's you accomplishing in your own personal life and in your business what you're capable of accomplishing. Mark Twain tells the story about how a military historian, he dies and he goes to heaven. And when he goes to heaven, he stands in front of St. Peter and he says, St. Peter, I want to know, just because I'm so interested in history and military, who was the greatest general of all times? Well, St. Peter points over to a man across the side and he says, that gentleman right over there is the greatest general ever created. Man looked at him and said, well, that can't be. I know that man. That man is just a common man. There's no way he was the greatest general. And St. Peter said, yeah, he would have been the greatest general had he become one. What is it that we're lacking today? What is it that we have fallen short of? What is it that we could have been? What is it that we still could be? But because the glass ceiling is now so foggy and so low, we've now gone on a path to where we're headed. And I believe that statement. I say it frequently, that I think we are all on a path towards where you're headed. And so if you just look at your recent life and look at where you're at today and what you've accomplished and where you're headed, what's it going to look like? And when you get there, are you going to be satisfied? Are you going to say, I reached my potential, I became the general? Are you going to say that you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish? Folks, we have to break through that glass ceiling. It's time for us to smash through it and say, I no longer accept being less than I could be. I'm not saying we have to work harder. I'm not saying we're going to have to do things that are impossible. What I'm saying is the opportunity is in front of us. If we do the right things, I believe we all can meet our potential in our personal lives and in our business. I'll tell you a little story about a football player. Back when I decided I wanted to go into the college football ranks, I'd actually sat out for a year and played professional soccer out of high school, and I decided I wanted to go back to school. And so the University of Texas football program seemed like a great place to go. And if you know anything about the history of the University of Texas, they are a very talented program, and they have no problem recruiting great people. And they bring in some of the best people in the country to be players on their team, and they recruit who they want. But being a state school, they have to allow anyone to come and be a part of the tryouts. And so the way the University of Texas program back in the 1980s, 70s, and actually in the 60s, through that time frame, what they used to do is they would allow anybody to come try out a week before the actual rest of the team would show up. And what they would do is as these players would come, sometimes there would be over 200 players try out. What they would do is they would spend 4 days, 2 workouts per day, and the objective was, run them off. We don't want you here. So I decided I was going to be a part of that, little glutton for punishment. So I went down to the University of Texas, got suited up into my shorts and T-shirt and tennis shoes, went out on the field, and there was 125 guys that day that decided that they were going to be a part of the University of Texas Longhorn football program. And Spanky was the trainer, and Spanky stood up in front of us the very first day, and he said, let me tell you what we're doing here. 125 of you, and we want none of you. We have no interest in you. You're not going to be on this team. We don't want you here. You might as well leave right now. We're going to put you through 4 days, 2 practices each day, and I promise you every one of you will be gone. So why even put yourself through the punishment? If you want to, you can leave right now. And so they began the practice, and the kinds of things we did, we had to run sometimes dozens of 100-yard sprints. Now, this is August in Austin, Texas. If you don't know how hot that is, ask Joe Claiborne. He'll tell you. It's a little bit warm down there, a little bit humid. And so we would go through these hot workouts of running hundreds. Then they would make us run 100-yard sprints, but every 10 yards they would have a dummy that you would have to hit, roll 3 times, get up, run 10 more yards, hit it, roll 3 times, all the way down the field. We would then have to do hundreds of sit-ups, hundreds of push-ups, other drills that just absolutely would annihilate your body. We had guys quitting as the practice went on in the first morning practice. Then they took us inside. And when we got inside, they had hanging dummies from the ceiling, not me, but a real hanging dummy. And they had these drains underneath each one of the dummy, and it was concrete floor, unfinished. And what they would do is they would make us start by running in place and punching the bag. And I don't know if you've ever done that, but 3 minutes can just about make you pass out. You would rotate with 2 other players. Then they would get you down on your knees, and every time they blew the whistle, you would have to explode off your knees into this dummy, hit it as hard as you can, regroup and get back on your knees again, blow the whistle and go again. Well, I don't know if you've ever been on your knees exploding into something like that on concrete, but it tends to rip the knees up. They didn't think much about bloodborne pathogens back in the early 1980s and late 1970s. And so as I sat there and ripped my knees to shreds and it would bleed all over the place, when I got up, the next guy had to get right back down in that spot, and it was his turn. And we would rotate through, all of us, over and over again, every third person, and going. Then they would put us underneath the lockers and put our feet underneath and say, I'm going to blow the whistle. Every time I blow the whistle, I want you to scream as loud as you can and give us the number, the count that you're on, and we're going to go to 100. To this day, I still can't remember how many times we hit 96, 97, or 98, and he said, that's not loud enough. Go back to 1. I bet we did over 1,000 to 1,200 sit-ups that first morning. We left that morning. He gave us another speech saying, I don't want you here. That afternoon, less than 60 arrived. We went through the same workout again that afternoon. My body was in so much pain and so severe. Mentally, I almost couldn't stand it, but I stayed through it, and we pushed through the day. We continued to get the speeches that we don't want you here. The next morning when we arrived, there were 12. 12 people showed up. The rest of them were smart enough and realized what was going on. The 12 of us stayed there the second morning, and we went through, and it was the same kind of workout, pushing us the same way, annihilating our bodies and mentally screaming at us and telling us how worthless we were and how stupid we were for staying around. That afternoon, one other guy and I stood there, and he put us through again the same workout. Now it was harder, though, because with the two of us, there was no more rest. We just had to go. 2 to 2.5 hour workout, where they continued to push us, continued to scream at us, and now he's getting mad because Spanky wanted the afternoon off. And now he's sitting there screaming at us saying, I don't want to be here. I'm sick of you guys wasting my time. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Well, day 2 ended. The guy and I committed to each other, we'll be back tomorrow. The next morning, I stood alone. There was nobody there with me except Spanky. Me and Spanky had a little conversation. He said, Larry, there's 2 more days, 4 more workouts. I am not going to be here those 4. I'm going to run you out of here. Why don't you just go home now? And I looked at him and I said, I think it's time for you to blow the whistle. And we began the workouts. And he pushed me and he beat me and he wore me out. And about halfway through the day, I remember very clearly, I'm laying on my back after doing some sprints, and we started the sit-ups. And he stood over the top of me and he looked me in the eye and he said, Lenny, I'm going to tell you something, boy. I am not staying here the rest of the day. You're either going to quit or you are going to die. And I looked up at him and I said, Coach, Spanky, I'll pass out before I die. And I kept going. And the rest of the day, the banter kept going. You're going to die or you're going to quit. And I'd say, you're not good enough to kill me. I'll pass out before I die. 2 more days. Made it to the last. We finished up. He walked up to me and he gave me a big hug and shook my hand. He said, Larry, you're the first guy in the last 3 years that's made this. And you're probably the only guy that'll make it in the next couple of years. He says, we don't tell people this, but if you make it through it, you get honored. You get to move into the varsity locker room. You get to suit up with the team all year long, whether you're as a freshman, whether you play or not. You get to suit up and you get to go in the varsity locker room. All of our high recruits have to go to the freshman locker room, but you're with us. Now, this story was not to tell you about me, to tell you what a great job I did and how cool that was. This story is about the 124. What about those that didn't make it? What happened to them? What's the rest of their life look like? I don't know. Maybe successful, maybe not. But why didn't they make it? Was it too hard? Was it physically too difficult? Would it kill them? I don't think so. I think it was a choice. They made a choice not to push through and do what it took to be able to get something that they felt like that they wanted to get. Every one of them came there with the passion and the desire to say, I want to be successful. I want to be a Longhorn. But 124 said, no, I think that glass ceiling's a little bit too heavy. I'm not quite ready to push through that. And so they didn't. And so they fell short. And so the question I ask you is, what's your dream? What's your passion? What's your personal passion? What's your business passion? What is it that you set out to do? And are you allowing somebody, something, an economy, another business, a competitor, a client, are you allowing somebody else to look at you and say, you're going to die. Why don't you just quit? Why don't you just back off? Why don't you slow down? You're not that good. You can't get there. And you're not willing to look back up at them and say, I'll pass out before I die. Blow the whistle. That's what we've got to do. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through 7 different things that I believe are the 7 things that can help you to break through the glass ceiling. Whether it's in your own personal life today and that's where you want to focus, that's great. Or if you want to move to the business side of your life and think about what do we have to do as a company to break through that glass ceiling, And quit making excuses to say that we can't do this, or we can't accomplish this, or I don't have the right things here, or it's okay to be less than I dreamed that we could be. I'm going to give you a little push and hopefully help you get that right sledgehammer to the breakthrough. Now, the first item is intellectual stimulation. Now, many of you know me personally, and you know that I'm not the smartest guy in the world. And I love the saying that says, I could have been a Rhodes Scholar if it wasn't for my grades. Pretty much fits me. And I'm the guy that graduated high school and college in the quarter of the class that made the top 3 quarters possible. So I'm not the brightest guy in the world, but I'm going to tell you what, as I went through high school, as I went through college, even as I entered into the professional sports ranks, I had a lot of people say, Larry, you need to read more. You need to study more. You need to investigate more and become intellectually more stimulated. And I kept pushing them off, going, no, I don't need that. I'm kind of learning as I go. I'm learning things that I see. I'm a visual guy. I'm checking it out. I don't need all that education, extra reading stuff. Well, it was finally somebody got through to me when I entered the professional business ranks and said, you really should read. And they convinced me. And so I started reading books, and I started studying. I started to get into more things that helped me to realize that, man, when you stimulate your brain, there's so many more things that come your way. You can become more innovative. You can come up with better strategies. You get better language and the ability to do things that you just were not able to do otherwise. I had a young woman working for me one time, and I was talking to her about developing her skills. And she said, Larry, I just have to tell you, I've been to a lot of training in my life, and I'm just kind of done learning. What I'd like to do is just spend the rest of my life applying all that I've learned. And I just looked at her with this sadness, thinking, you got to be kidding me. That's all you're going to accomplish in your life? That's as far as you're going to be able to go? I was reading the other day that on the internet and all the information that comes our way now, you get, by internet and reading and information and television and all that comes our way in life and experience today, did you know in 3 months you get more information than somebody in the 1800s got in their entire life? More than they got in their whole life, even in the early 1900s. And they're saying the speed of information and what we get today is coming even faster and faster, that's going to shorten. People entering college today as a freshman, by the time they graduate, more than half of what they learned is obsolete. Almost makes you say college isn't worth it anymore. Except for the degree. That's a good thing to carry on. Folks, information's coming fast. What happens if you decide to not learn for a year? That's 4 years of loss. 4 years of maybe a potential of life of information that you've lost. I didn't get to see the real impact of this until recently. I was talking to a gentleman that was my mentor. He was my mentor as a young man, and I used to listen to him and hear his stories, and he gave me so much inspiration. And I met him. I hadn't seen him in about 8 years. And I met him, and we had a conversation. It was one of the saddest things I'd ever seen. He hadn't read. He hadn't studied. He hadn't been around other business people. He hadn't experienced the things that were changing in the world. And he was so proud and so confident of his conversation that was so ignorant. He was so far behind. And it gave me the reality of saying, my goodness, 8 years, it's a long time, but it's really not that long to go from being an incredible mentor to being one that actually comes across as being somewhat ignorant. I've got to challenge you, folks. We can learn. I read a study the other day that said that they used to think 60s, 70s, maybe into your mid-70s, you can continue to learn. They've done studies now that have proven that well into your 80s and 90s, your brain has the ability to continue to grow and to learn and to take on new data and new information and to be stimulated. Folks, we don't stop. And if you do stop, you're in a terrible, dangerous place. Do you want to break through the glass ceiling, the things that are holding you down? Well, I believe if you're not stimulating purposefully, planning out, learning, what is it that you want to learn? What's one thing that if you learned that in the next year, you'd be better in your business? You'd be better in your company? You'd be better personally? What's one thing you could learn? What's one book that could make you better? What's one periodical that could stimulate you and let you know more about what's going on with politics and the economy or something that's important to you? What about learning music? It doesn't even have to be business. Folks, if you're not stimulating your brain, if you're not stimulating your mind, I'm telling you right now, you have a very small chance of being able to break through the glass ceiling. The next important area of getting through that glass ceiling is physical. Now, I want to start by telling you, I'm not saying where you've been or where you're at today even matters. You know, don't be offended by the thought of that we have to be physically strong to be successful. I want to tell you the past doesn't matter. It's about now going forward. I have a lot of people come to me and ask me, Larry, being an ex-professional athlete, Larry, being a business leader, you know, what do you need to do to really become sharper, to spend more time being able to be better at what you do in your company? I like to start right here. What I have found is that when people push themselves physically, it tends to stimulate them more mentally, spiritually. As I mentioned earlier, the samurai are a big passion of mine. And when you look at the samurai training that they go through, you know what they start with? Physical. They don't even start with the spiritual. They don't start with the mental. They don't start with the training items. What they do is they do the Tai Chi, the yoga, the strengthening, and physical things because they believe if you learn to push through the toughest possible things physically, you'll have no problem pushing through things mentally. You'll have no problem staying disciplined spiritually. So physical training actually becomes the stimulus, the core of your being that allows you to do those other things. Are you tired? Are you fatigued? Do you not have enough energy to do what you do every day to be successful in your business? Do you find yourself spiritually weak, emotionally struggling? It begins with the core. Go become strong. Go get healthier, eat better, work out, get your cardiovascular stronger. When you improve physically, and again, it doesn't matter where. I'm not saying become a bronze Adonis. I'm saying wherever you are today, let's look for progress. Progress will improve and get you to the place to where all of a sudden you do have more energy. And you have the ability now to work through and break that glass ceiling that might be sitting there holding you back, but you just don't have the energy. And you can't break through, and the emotional and the spiritual and all these things keep you from getting there. Larry, I can't stimulate myself intellectually. I'm too tired. I can't read. I'm too tired at night. I just go to sleep every time I put a book in front of me. Physical development is the core. And if you do that, you have the ability now to do all of the other things that I'm identifying that can help you break through the glass ceiling. Now, results are something that I have come to a new religion on. And I tell you what, so many times we get focused on the stuff. And just like I said in the opening, we have a lot of people that have been to the class and a lot of people that are out there and they got the pans and they got the recipes and they got all things that make Mutter's rolls, but man, your rolls suck. And you're just not getting the results. And you're not bringing the results that you've committed to and that you believe that you can get to, and we just stay away from them. I remember coaching a high school soccer team, a girls' soccer team. Wonderful team, and I was the new coach, and I put them through all the paces, and my objective was make sure they knew every single one of our plays and our systems and the way to run our offense. And so I had taught them, overlaps and give and goes and all of these great strategies to score goals. Well, I remember the very first game, I had a player that broke away towards the goal. She was going, she had somebody coming close to her, and she ended up, and the player was getting real close, so she decided to pass it to another player who was wide open in front of the net. Wide open. The keeper had even come over to her. She passed the ball over to this wide open player who stood there, the ball came, and she passed it right back to her because we had taught her that you do a give and go in that situation. Now the keeper's there, another player's there, the ball gets kicked up and out of bounds, game over. We don't score. After the game, I sat her down and I said, did you realize that the net was wide open? There was nobody there. All you had to do is just barely kick it and you would have scored. She said, yeah, I knew that. I said, why did you kick it to the other girl? She said, because that was the play. That's what I was supposed to do. You think I made a big mistake as a coach? I forgot to teach him what we were trying to get accomplished. The result, the score, put the ball in the net, whatever it takes. I changed my whole strategy as a coach after that. And every practice from that point on, we did things just around scoring and winning. And our team changed everything that happened, and we ended up having an incredibly successful year. I'm going to ask you a question that might be a challenge to you. If I went to your people today and I sat them down and I said, in your job, I know that you do these tasks and these functions and these things. You build pipelines, you work on things, you answer the phones, you do processing of paper, you do all of these things. If I ask them, what are the results that you are expected to bring, and how is that measured? What would they tell me? Would they even know? Do they understand the results? Or are they just going through the motions? Are they doing the stuff to do the stuff? Do we learn our systems and go to training and come back and say we're executing everything? Boy, aren't we happy? Folks, it's about results. It's about results. And I believe that the world is changing and that it is okay to have results. I think we're having a fundamental shift right now in business. The fundamental shift in business is this. It used to be said that it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's how you play the game. It's all about the journey, not the destination. Let me ask you right now, how many of you would like to have a good destination right now? And you're a little bit sick of the journey. Now, I believe there's great principles to learn in those statements. Don't discard them, but I think you're getting lied to. I know I would be real happy with certain destinations, and that's what I'm working towards. And you know what? If the journey stinks a little bit every once in a while, I'll pass out before I die. I want the result, and I'm happy with the destination. And I'm going to be happy with every one of my team members when they know clearly what their personal destination is and what our corporate destination is and what we want to accomplish now in the near future and in the long term. When it is very clear to them, I think they'll get us there. But as long as they're thinking, but coach, I'm supposed to do a give and go. That's like standing in front of a prospect that says, you know what, I think I want to give you the business. No, can't do that yet. We got to do a workshop. You got to get results focused. Our organization changed this year. I got religion in Dallas. When I heard John Schlittke stand in front of the group and tell everybody, we grew 76% in the last 3 years as an insurance brokerage firm in a tough marketplace, in a shrinking market. And the way that we did it is results. We think results. We eat results. We talk about results. We have clear expectations. We measure results. We monitor results. We live results. And with our clients, we begin by saying, tell me where you're at. I want to know clearly what types of measurements we can put in place, because all we do as a company is improve your results. I'll tell you all the process stuff later, but the bottom line is we are here to help you get results. What's the starting point? Where are we going? And I went, you know what? That's it. I heard Tom Hickey talking about how their company is getting tremendous results financially. And it's because they focus on certain things that they say, these are the things we're going to do. And it's clear in the organization. They understand that. Folks, if you want to be able to break through the glass ceiling, all you've got to do is define it. Define what it looks like, communicate it, make it clear, and be results focused. Don't just look at the steps along the way. Those are important. We have to have them, but focus on the results. Value dilution is really what I'm talking about here. We begin our life with the greatest hopes of being the greatest things ever. We begin our businesses with the greatest hopes. And then all of a sudden we wake up one day and we realize we've diluted our own value. My father and I were playing golf in Farmington, New Mexico one time, and there was a gentleman that took us out to this private little 9-hole company golf course. We went and played the 9 holes. At the finish, my father said, "How much do I owe you?" And the guy looked at my dad and said, "I just put $1 in the box. That's all it cost. Don't worry about it." And my dad said, "You know, it's not what it cost, it's what it's worth." And from that point forward, I recognize that there's a difference between what something costs and what something is worth. Do you know what most of you have done in this industry? You have diluted your value. I was working with one of our members recently talking about the Make the Noise Go Away book and some training programs that I've developed for them to be able to, for the membership to be able to use and to create opportunities. And it's got a price tag to it that's pretty hefty as far as what they're going to charge to their client. And I was telling them, you need to go charge this, because if you can help make the noise go away from a CEO, you can help a second in command be more successful in their business. That's worth some money. And you know what his answer to me was? He had this just depressed feel in his voice. He went, you got to bear with me, Larry. You got to bear with me here, because we've trained our clients that we do our value services for free. Have you diluted your value? Do you give stuff away? Have we trained our people? Have we trained our clients to do things and we just give it away? Our producers come to producer training camps and they talk to us and we say, all right, so how do you present your services? And when somebody says, wow, those are great services, what's that going to cost? And you know what most of your producers say? Well, they're free. We include them. We give them to you. You get all this extra stuff for nothing. What's it worth? It's worth nothing. We're training people that our value is worth less and less and less. But you can break through that. You can change that game. We can start telling our clients, you know what? That service costs $25,000. Fortunately, the insurance carrier in paying us is going to be able to compensate us to do that. But you've got to start placing a value on what you do. Then you've got to start looking for things that you absolutely can charge for. And I believe you can, and I've experienced it. We used to make over $100,000 a year teaching 3 classes to our clients in the agency I came from. $100,000 a year just teaching classes to them because it improved their businesses. And guess what else happened? We brought in prospects. And when we brought those prospects in and taught these things to them, 100% of them became full-time insurance clients. Over $500,000 of recurring revenue came to our agency because we started teaching them things and we started doing things for them that brought them value that they were willing to pay for. Are you diluting your value? Are you telling people that you're worth less? Are you creating a dialogue out there that says I'm not worth as much money as I think I should be, or as actually you are to them? Are you quantifying the value to them and then yet giving it away? Folks, we cannot continue to dilute the value. I remember when I was a young man, I come from a farm family in Stephenville, Texas. My grandfather ran a farm, and I used to go out with him in the mornings in the summer. I remember one morning we went out and we were walking around feeding all the cattle, and we left that area and went to another fenced-in area, and all he had was electric fences. And I remember as a young boy, one time I hit that electric fence. I'm going to tell you what, you ever hit an electric fence? You're going to know it. It'll light you up. Well, my grandfather that day walked over, and there was some trash on the other side of this electric fence, and he needed to get it and bring it back. So he pulls the pickup up, gets out of the truck, and I watched him. He walks over to the electric fence, and he goes, grabbed it, went up over the top of it, grabbed his stuff, threw it back over, came over and put it back in the truck. And I went, he turned off the fence. So I said, Grandpa, I don't understand. Why do you have an electric fence that you don't have turned on? He said, well, boy, that costs a lot of money. Fire all that electricity through there. He said, what I did is I turned it on for a period of time, and the cows would hit it, and it'd light them up. And they'd get a couple of hits on there, and they realized, hey, man, I'm not going to hit that fence again. And he said, and then I turned it off. They still don't go to that fence because they're afraid they're going to get lit up. Is that the way we've treated our clients? Is that the way we've treated our employees? Have we trained ourselves to not step over the fence and to go to that other side where great things could be? Folks, you're diluting your value, and you cannot continue to do that in this business world, because the things that you are cherishing right now, those commissions and those contingencies, they are going away slowly but surely. It's diluting. And we have to be able to find ways to get the value for what we do. Right now in the business world, people are struggling with compliance, new political compliance, new issues coming their way in the world of business that they don't know what to do with. They don't know what to do with social networking, marketing strategies. So many things coming their way that are problems that they're willing to write a check for. But if we just keep saying, that's free, we'll do it for nothing, we'll include it, you're going to be the one that's out of business, and you're going to have a real low glass ceiling. Plan, measure, and monitor. Very good friend of mine, Tom Carroll, teed me up for this. I was working on this presentation when I was talking to Tom one day from Baltimore, and Tom said, Larry, I learned something today. Everything of significance that I've accomplished in my life has begun by having a plan, by measurements that tell me what the end result looks like, and by monitoring that plan along the way. Everything of significance. And I thought of that for a second. I went, you know what? That's my story. Everything of significance that I've accomplished started with a clear plan that had measurements of the result that I wanted, and I monitored and adjusted along the way. And one of my other favorite heroes is Lance Armstrong. And Lance Armstrong has won numerous Tour de France races. And you look at what Lance has done and you think, well, you hear the stories about his oxygen levels being extreme compared to everybody else. And he was a disciplined guy, and he's got a great team. And a lot of people write off his success to certain attributes. I'm going to tell you what the biggest thing Lance Armstrong does is he has an absolute discipline to planning. He looks at the end result and knows what he wants, and he starts with this incredible discipline to planning. He's one of the earlier adopters to building these wind tunnels. We can put that back up. These wind tunnel systems that would track and monitor heart rate and racing speeds and body positions. And he would work with his teams in these tunnels, and they do statistical analysis. And they would completely plan a race years in advance. Years in advance, they had a strategy of who was going to be in race, how they were going to race them, and had a complete plan designed out. Now, what's exciting about the way plans work is you organize it, you think about it, you put it together, you get the plan. Where am I starting? Where am I finishing? What's going to happen along the way? And then when he showed up to the race, everything could change. It could rain. It could have competitors get injured. One of your people could get hurt. Things could change. But because the plan was so well designed and their ability to adjust off that, they could go full speed towards what they wanted to get accomplished, and all they had to do was adjust and adjust and adjust and monitor and adjust. Folks, if you are running your business randomly, you have to think way too much. And you have to stop when there's major problems and it handicaps you. If you take the time and the discipline to plan appropriately so that you can go full speed, and then you have the ability to adjust and adjust and adjust, that's when you're going to be able to break through a glass ceiling. That's when you're going to be able to get results that are exceptional results. One of my favorite videos. Watch this with me.
We get the warhead and we hold the world ransom for $1 million.
Well, don't you think we should maybe ask for more than $1 million? $1 million isn't exactly a lot of money these days. Virtucon alone makes over $9 billion a year.
Really? Mm-hmm. It's not. Okay, then. We hold the world ransom for $100 billion.
As soon as I thought of this topic of setting low expectations, my mind went right there. And I thought of many of you and many of the people I've talked to and the expectations that I hear you talk about of what you think you can accomplish and what you think your organization could get done and what even you expect of your individuals. Scott White and I had a conversation 5 years ago. I'd come on as a new rookie coach to this organization, and I was going to introduce myself to some people, and I heard Scott White was one of the high-level implementers. So I called Scott, and I said, Scott, I want to have a conversation with you, just get to know you a little bit. Tell me about your company. And he went through and told me, and he says, our producers sell about 35,000 a year, and, that's what we expect. And I stopped him, and I said, well, dude, I got to tell you, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and my people used to do 40, 50 a year. And then when I got there, we decided we were going to raise the expectation. And we raised it to 100 and then 125,000 a year in Albuquerque. And guess what? All my producers all of a sudden went there. And Scott goes, well, you don't know the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You can't do that there. You can't do that there. As a matter of fact, yesterday we had a conversation about it again. And he said, Larry, you really kind of irritated me because you're telling me something. And I went, you know what? You're an idiot, Larry. You don't know what you're talking about because there's no way you understand my marketplace. Well, fortunately, I was firm enough with him that day, and I said, well, you're wrong, and I don't agree with you. And until you raise that standard, you're not going to get there. So Scott was standing there going, $1 million. And I said, no, it's $100 billion. Do you know Scott has producers the last couple of years that have done $100,000 a year? Do you know he has 3 that will probably hit $100,000 this year? Do you know he's got a rookie, or not rookie, a 2 or 3 year producers. It's 26, 25, 26 years old. He's done $50,000 in the first quarter in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Folks, are you setting your expectations way too low for people? Do we look out our window in our office, in our world, and say, this is what we expect? One of my great friends and one of my most cherished mentors passed away this last year, Dan Taylor. And Dan Taylor one time was talking to a small group, and he was telling us about his life and his experience and how sometimes we have a tendency just to see what's right around us. He said when he was in college, he lived about 3.5 hours away, and he would call home to his mom and say, Mom, I'm getting ready to leave. I'm on my way. And his mom was one of those people that was just a homebody. She loved being at home, and she loved hanging out at the house. And so she would sit there, and she'd look out the window, and she'd say, now, Danny, it's raining, so you need to drive slow and be careful. It's going to take you a little bit longer today. Now, Dan would look at the news or look at the internet, or what, back then no internet, but he would look out there and get the report, and he would find out that there was a microburst of rain near her house, and there was 3.5 hours of clear skies. And he'd say, Mom, no, I'll be there in 3.5 hours. The skies are clear. And his mom would say, now, Danny, I'm looking out the window, honey. I know it's raining. You know, I think of that, and I think of us, and I think, many times people look at us and say, Larry, you can do $125,000 per producer. Hey, your company can make 25% profit. Hey, your company has the ability to grow and be successful. Your company has the ability to develop people, to hire better people. Your company has the potential of doing certain things. And I listen to you say, well, you don't know my marketplace. You don't know how hard it is for us. You don't know what we're up against. I'm looking out my window here, and you just can't do that here. But it's amazing. I've watched organizations in small marketplaces where one producer is saying all you can do is sell about $50,000 a year in this market. And I know of another producer at another brokerage in the same city that's doing $250,000 a year. I think a lot of times we set our expectations where we think they are based on what we know. You've got an incredible opportunity here. You have the opportunity to hear what other people do. Don't listen to them and say, well, that's you. That's what you can do. Whenever you hear those different things are going on, say, wow, you mean that's the potential? I got to figure that out. I got to get there. And I'm going to set my expectations high. And I'm going to stop allowing myself to start down here and hit it. I don't think any of us came into this business saying, I can't wait to be in the insurance business so I can become a thousandaire. No, I think you said, I kind of like to be more successful than that. And again, it's not just about the money. I'm going to tell you what's going to make you happy is reaching your potential. And if you set your potential too low, you will end up later in your life, and you will look at your life, and you will look at your results, and you will say, I fell short of my potential, and I'm going to create a legacy in my family and in my business of not meeting potential. And I don't think any of us want that to be our legacy. I think we want to go beyond that. The last story I have for you today is an interesting story that happened to me. I'd gone to Florida and had a great work experience and had a really neat thing happen that day in business. I was feeling really good about myself. And then I went to the airport, flew to Orlando, and I was sitting in the Orlando airport right here in this city. Had about an hour and a half layover, and so I got on the computer and I was doing some work. And I had been working on my book. This was last summer. I'd been working on my book. I wanted it to be successful. I was thinking a lot about it and trying to get things done. And I had given a copy of my book to Larry Gilroy from Gilroy, Kern & Gilroy. And he knew Ken Blanchard. And Ken Blanchard, the author of The 1 Minute Manager and has sold more books, over 18 million books worldwide. He gave him that, and supposedly Ken couldn't get the email and couldn't see it, and so it was kind of a dead issue. Well, I'm sitting in this airport looking through emails. My computer's working slowly to the point, and all of a sudden it's about 2 minutes before the flight, and I get to this email, and it's one from Larry Gilroy. He says, you got to listen to this. And he had recorded a phone call from Ken Blanchard, and the phone call said, Larry Gilroy, I just read your friend Larry Linney's book. I think it's unbelievable. I think it's a must-read for any executive in the business world today. I love it, and I'd love to talk to him to see if there's anything I can do to help this young man out. He didn't know me. So I was blown up. And right then they said, it's time to load and board flight so-and-so to Denver, Colorado. So I had to pack everything out. I got my cell phone, and I dialed my wife because I couldn't wait to tell her, this is the greatest. I got to tell my wife, Ken Blanchard's going to help me. The phone was dead. No battery. So I go over to get in line, and I'm standing in line thinking, that poor son of a gun sitting next to me on the plane is going to hear 3 hours of Ken Blanchard and make the noise go away. I cannot wait to tell this guy, whoever it is, how cool I am. Because, man, am I cool right now. So I get on the plane, a 97-year-old woman and her 68-year-old daughter, they told me their ages, sat next to me, and they told me in the beginning they started talking and didn't stop. And they told me how they had lived their lives as teachers and as nurses and as military servant personnel, and how they'd given back to the world, and how they were so proud of raising their family that every one of their family members had become teachers and nurses and military personnel, and how they had served other people. And she was so excited. She was going to Portland, Oregon, and what she was looking forward to doing was getting to Portland to her granddaughter's house so she could clean her oven. 3 hours I got to hear, and I'm going to tell you what, I was mesmerized. All I could listen to is how incredible this woman was, and I didn't think anything about my book. I got off the plane, and the energy came back, and I thought, I got to find somebody because I'm about to explode. So I get on the train, and there's a guy standing next to me on the train, pretty businessy looking. I said, how you doing? Thinking, maybe I can spark a little conversation and tell him how cool I am. So I said, how you doing? He looked at me and he said, I'm not doing too good. I just sat on a plane for the last 2 hours and listened to some blowhard tell me how cool he was. I went, boy, doesn't that stink? Don't you hate it when that happens? Oh, man. Oh, yeah, we're just trying to get home here, aren't we? So I left there and I went to baggage claim. The bags were late, and I started getting mad. I'm going, this stinking airport. I got to get to my car and plug my phone in so I can call my wife and tell her how cool I am and tell my kids how awesome. And I'm going to call tons of people and tell them what a wonderful thing that's happened in my life. So I get to my car and I plug my phone in. Battery, come on, baby, come on. I'm not even starting the truck. I just want this thing to go. I get on it and I dial, and the phone service comes on and says, this phone is no longer in service. I'm going, what? What happened? And I realized my wife switched the phone over to the Denver number from our Florida number. I don't even have a phone service right now until I can get this thing programmed, and I didn't know how to program it. So now I've got a 45-minute drive home. I'm thinking, I'm so mad at my wife right now. She has just cost me 40 minutes of incredible bragging about how cool I am. And I'm furious, and I'm getting madder by the second. And I got to tell you, there's a few times in life, and many of you know I'm a pretty spiritual guy, but there's many times in life that God just speaks to me, and this was one of them. I was on the toll road coming around. It had been about 10 minutes from the airport. I'm on the toll road getting madder and madder, and right then I heard a message, however clear it could be to me, that said, look, you idiot, I made your cell phone die. I put an old lady next to you to see what's really important in life. I put a guy in a train to tell you what an idiot you are. I slowed down the luggage to slow you down. I made your wife change the phone. If you don't quit thinking how cool you are, we may have a wreck. And I just calmed right then, and I went, you know what? My press clippings aren't that cool, are they? It's really not that big a deal. And I realized at that point, the one thing that could cost me my future is me getting in the way. And I think a lot of times we look at our past sales, we look at our past successes, and we say, aren't we cool? Look what I've accomplished. I did all that. And every word that just came out of my mouth wasted time of what I could be doing in the future. And every thought about what I did do and what has happened is me getting in the way of there and my potential. When you read your own press clippings and see how cool you are, you will wake up one day and find out you're way short of where you could have been. I love the saying that says, my future is always going to be greater than my past. I'll tell you what, when your past is always greater than your future, you're not going to be much fun to be around, and you're not going to reach very many successes in your life. I want to challenge you. Whatever you've done, and I guarantee if you're in this room, you got clippings. You've got some clippings because you wouldn't have been invited into this membership if you didn't have something to offer. But don't spend any time reading them. They're done. Let's look at the future. Let's think about what we can become and where we're headed in the future. Folks, if we want to smash through the glass ceiling, if we really want to break through and go to areas and places that we've never been before, we got to focus on doing some things that are critical. And I think the 7 things I've introduced would give you a great, great head start at becoming what you could become. As George Bernard Shaw said, I think you'd like to look at your life and say, I accomplished what I could have accomplished, not I wish I could have been who I could have been. There was a woman that came to an incredible musician after a concert. And she said, you know what? I would give anything to play like you play. And he looked back at her and says, no, ma'am, I don't believe you would. I don't believe you want it bad enough to do what it takes. Do you have enough desire? Do you really want to meet your potential? Do you really want to accomplish what you were made and built and have the potential to accomplish in your personal and your business life? Well, if that woman that said that and the truth be known that she didn't have what it took, if she only knew, she'd have passed out before she died. We can do this. Next couple of days, listen, hear the potential, commit to do it, and let's make a difference. Let's turn Sitkins International into the organization that nationwide, worldwide, people say, I don't know what they do, but they just absolutely break through anything that seems to be a glass ceiling. Spend a couple of minutes on your notes, write down what you think you need to do with this. Get yourself prepared for some incredible speakers that are going to teach you some ideas and things to do. Spend a few minutes on that now.